Hello and welcome back to Under the Tunes. Today we're looking at Spyro and some lost music. Yes, that's right. Not all the music that was made for these games made it to the disc. We'll also be looking at some Japanese trailers, why not? And more interestingly, how Spyro was represented in Japan, because it's not as successful as last episode's Crash Bandicoot. But we'll get onto that later. So first up, we're going to be talking about Year of the Dragon. So as we covered in the video you just saw, hopefully, a lot of the tracks didn't get completed in time for the first release, and they were then released with the Platinum Edition, Special Edition, whatever you want to call it. However, there is one level that never got the theme that was made for it, and it's quite a shame, really, because, well, first off, the track that it was given was a previous track, but just with an accordion added. I don't know. Well, let's take a listen. So we're going to be looking at Lost Fleet. And yes, this is kind of like the track it was given. So yeah, there's that added accordion. An additional frog as well. Interesting that. But yeah, I always remember thinking, oh, this sucks. This is kind of the Sheila's Alps, but a bit more annoying. Not to say that Sheila's Alps was annoying at all. I quite like that track. But with this accordion, just a bit annoying. So yeah, there was a track made for this, and it did actually go through a lot of, it made it through production quite far. There's a few different alternative versions of this track out there that you could listen to at different times of production, but it never made it to release. I'm wondering if it was, a call from the higher ups at Insomniac. They just weren't feeling the vibe, because it is a very different sounding track. Let's take a listen, and yeah, you'll see what I mean. Quite a sad track for Spyro, but it doesn't stop there. We get a bit of rock and roll, maybe, if you want to call it that. Let's just call it rock. You'll hear what I mean in a second. Yeah, so it's not a very Spyro track. I mean, it's got that foundation I waffle on about, but it's got this kind of, sadder tone to it. But the level you're running around, it's got acid pools, it's quite, the environment is going to get you at some point. But I really like it. It's a shame it wasn't added into the game, because I really do think it sticks out in its own way, which is a positive. Now let's take a listen to see how further the track goes, because it brings in those organs, as you can hear. So I'm not really anybody, who has a say in what musics should be made to a final release or not. But I think this should have been made to a final release, because it's original, it's unique, it really does set a tone. I think it's a perfect example of how music can set a tone so much. But yeah, what do you think? Lost Fleet, the original track, I think it's great. Shame it wasn't added. Now let's move on to a alternative track for Frozen Altars, but have a listen to this one and see if you can see any relation that this alternative track has to the original Lost Fleet track. rocking electric guitar comes again. So I think that must have been what it was. Insomniac doesn't want rock and roll as part of Spyro. They're like, no, hold it back. I don't know, I'm talking out of my presumption. My ass presumption. Anyway, so they're the two tracks I thought were fascinating to look at. There are alternative versions for lots of other Spyro tracks from Year of the Dragon. I recommend going to check them out, but I thought these two were a really interesting little pairing to look at. So let's move on and have a look at Enter the Dragon, because oh my goodness, it gets crazy from here. There are so many unused tracks because there are so many unused levels. What the hell is that model of Ripto and his eye? Anyway, let's take a look at one called Mid Flute. An absolutely beautiful song. But moving on, let's have a look at Orbit, because I think all these tracks have these really original, unique intros. And lastly, let's have a look at Jota 2, whatever that means. But yeah, have a listen. Just a nice, interesting, different sound. Like I said, there's quite a lot of unused tracks from Enter the Dragon, because there was so much that was made for that game that we never got to see. It really was just a tumultuous, terrible time for everybody involved, it sounds like. Yeah, so many tracks got unused, and I think there's some really original ones, which is sad to hear because of how bad the soundtrack to Spyro Enter the Dragon got in the end. So yeah, quite an interesting one. So let's move on the video and have a look at how Spyro was advertised in Japan, because it was. They released the game over there, and interesting choices were made to the gameplay, shall we say? But let's take a look at how it was advertised, shall we? Disclaimer, I still don't understand Japanese since last episode. So it seems like these children have a Japanese teacher. Flipping ankles. Okay, he's teaching me how to fly. I haven't seen any gameplay yet. Oh, there it is. Okay, so yeah, interesting little one there. Oh, I'm not sure about that, guys. Come on, Japan. God. So, yeah, let's take a look at how the other ones were advertised in Japan. And interesting fact, I don't think there was any advertisement for the second game. Actually, I can't say that. I couldn't find any advertisements in Japan for the second game, but I did find this one for us in the West, which I thought was interesting. I shouldn't have. So this snowman guy was in one of the other adverts where Spyro was kind of melting him or something.
I've tried to run and hide, but he can climb and fly.
But every time he's at camera, they're doing like a Blair Witch Project parody, which is an interesting choice. But I guess, what, 1999 this came out? I guess that was...
I'm so
I bring you the strange adverts here. Ripto's Rage did come out in Japan, but it was the last Spyro game of this trilogy to come out in Japan. Year of the Dragon never did. But boy, did we use Japanese trauma to advertise it for us. clearly doing like a Godzilla thing. But yeah, Japan. And interesting because that trailer's like, yeah, they're celebrating the year of the dragon here and everything. Yeah, it's clearly a Godzilla thing. But anyway, it's a whole it's a whole thing. Alright, anyway. Interesting little journey that Spyro had in Japan. Similar to Crash in that I had to cute him up because he looked too edgy. So yeah, there you go. There's the there's the Japanese cover for Spyro. And you'll notice something interesting here. Yeah, it kind of almost looks like it spells out Ripto. And you'll never guess where Insomniac got the inspiration for Ripto's name. Yeah, it was how Japan script symbols, I guess, spell out Spyro. Now, the only problem with this is, well, I say the only problem. The main problem is that, yeah, it didn't do very well in Japan. Or at least the reception wasn't very good because this is how it played. Shout out to CrystalFissure here. So you'll notice that there's this kind of like locked camera thing going on here, and was the reason behind it the idea that I think Japanese RPGs and a lot of Japanese games weren't using the DualShock or weren't in 3D space much or something? So it was like, instead of allowing them to get used to it, they just didn't give them the option. They were just sort of like, no, you're playing it like this. And yeah, it annoyed the hell out of everybody who played it. It didn't review too well, mainly due to that. Yeah, but alas, Ripto's Rage still did come out, but it wasn't called Ripto's Rage in Japan. No, they had an alternative title, which was, let's see if I can pronounce this properly, Spyro X Sparks Tondemo Tours. Yes, look at that cover. It looks like, I mean, it looks like something out of like that game where you roll around stuff. I don't know, it's got that kind of vibe to it. Or like a Parappa the Rapper kind of cover with all the characters. It's funky, I like it. Now, what's interesting with this is they did kind of get a really cool case with it. Again, a shout out to CrystalFissure. But yeah, look at this. It's a completely non-looking PlayStation game. Super colourful. I don't know if this was a normal thing. But yeah, look at that. They've got like a whole design there, the world behind this little Spyro being chased by a robot shark. Really cool. Allura looks like the bottom half of a horse costume.
What are you, some kind of goat?
I'm a fawn, you dork.
Amazing. Well, there we go. I hope that's scratched the Japanese itch since the last episode. I don't know. But I feel like I'm doing my duty here of just kind of like educating people on Japanese releases. For some reason, that was not the intention of this channel, but here we are. Well, anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something today. Do check out those alternative tracks for Spyro Year of the Dragon and lots of the unused tracks for Enter the Dragon if they're games you played growing up, because there's some really interesting ones there, which I think is worth everybody having a listen to. But yeah, well, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time under the tunes. See you later.